What was your first reaction when you heard about this, Brian?
We live in a world where it's rare that those of us in my position are unaware of the possibility of a trade. We don't always know all four corners. We don't always know if it's going to happen. But most of the time, we have an inkling or we've heard something. And so a lot of times our reactions are muted. That was not the case here. There was absolutely no indication whatsoever that there was any possibility of this. So it was truly a stunning thing. And, as someone in my position, you instantaneously want to, I'll be on the hunt for more information to understand why it is. And I'm still in a lot of ways on the hunt for that.
I bet. And so, I think you nailed it perfectly, Brian, in your initial reaction. My son and I were watching it on the ESPN app on Saturday night. It's like a pocket listing. You know what I mean? Like it was a pocket listing of what you call it, like $1 billion property. And there was only one buyer that was aware of it. I've never heard of anything like this in any sport, anywhere, actually.
Yeah, I think in the days since, as I've talked to people in the league, what I would say is people can get their minds around wanting to trade Luka Doncic. People know about the warts that he presents, Dallas not wanting to give him $350 million is surprising. It could be a terrible mistake, but people can understand why the organization could come around to the idea they shouldn't do that, especially in a world where you look at the situation that the 76ers are in with Joel Embiid, and they're really locked in there. So that they understand. And I think even within the league, there is an understanding of why the Mavericks would only deal with the Lakers, because the Mavericks believe that they can win the title this year, and they only thought that Anthony Davis could make that happen. And they say, okay, even though that may not get them the best return, there's an understanding that you would want Anthony Davis. What I don't think people in the league understand, at least they haven't come to grips with it yet, is why not get everything that the Lakers had in this trade? I understand why the Lakers wouldn't offer it. I don't understand why the Mavericks wouldn't get all of that. So, like I said, the more time that goes past, the more you kind of understand, because this was sitting with the Mavericks and the Lakers for 2 weeks. They could think all of this out before making the choice. The rest of us are playing catch up in the thought process. I'm not over that last hurdle in terms of what the Mavericks were able to get back from the Lakers after they decided that's the way they wanted to go.
All right, let's put a pin in that part of it. Brian Windhorst, ESPN's Brian Windhorst here on the Rich Eisen Show. Our Infinity Sports Network radio audience just rejoined us as well. So when did this start? Let's start from the genesis here. When based on your catch-up, as you said, upon learning about this over the weekend, your knowledge of when it started and why?
Yeah, so I can't remember exactly how long ago the Lakers visited Dallas. They've gone there twice, so I think it was the second trip. Nico and Rob Pelinka had coffee, and you have to understand the history of these two guys. They go all the way back 20 plus years, Rich. When Kobe Bryant was at Adidas, if you remember early in his career, he was at Adidas, and he was leaving Adidas and going to Nike. It was a big shoe free agency. And his agent was Rob Pelinka. It was one of the first moves as Kobe's primary agent, was to execute this move. And Nico Harrison was a young executive at Nike. He was not the guy who was negotiating the deals, but his job was to win Kobe Bryant over on the front line, on the ground. And they did this deal together, basically, Rob and Nico. And over the next 20 years, when Nike did something with Kobe, which was a lot, it was Nico Harrison executing it. It was Rob Pelinka negotiating it. That they did this for years. 5 years ago this month, or I guess it was last month, when Kobe passed away, Rob and Nico were together in tears when that happened. Their relationship is beyond just two GMs. It's very long. And so I don't know if another GM could have negotiated like this with Rob. And so it stays quiet. They put it together. Nico described it as something that at the start was sort of a hypothetical, like, would you ever trade Anthony Davis? Would you ever trade Luka? And it sort of got more and more serious. And that's why it was able to stay quiet. And, I wouldn't say that Nico Harrison is in the Laker extended family, but certainly the Lakers have a trust level with him because of decades of work with Kobe Bryant. So part of the reason that this goes down the way it goes down is because of the Nico Lakers, Nico, Rob Pelinka relationship. And so I think really at the end of the day, the big giant decision that the Mavericks made is they didn't want to give Luka Doncic the $350 million, because normally when a player gets eligible for the Supermax, the team rushes to sign him. I use this example with the Oklahoma City Thunder. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is eligible for the Supermax in a market like Oklahoma City. If you can lock this guy down for 5 years during his prime, I'm telling you, on June 30th at 6 o'clock or whatever the time is when he's allowed to sign it, the Thunder are going to have the paperwork on the table. You would think that a guy like Luka, 25 years old, 5-time first team All-NBA, lead him to the finals, you would think you would want that guy locked down for the back half of his 20s. And the Mavericks made the decision, no, they were not going to do that. So once you've made that decision, once you've decided we are going to not have this guy be our franchise player, after that, all the decisions in some ways are a little less complicated. And they were less complicated because they wanted Anthony Davis and they had Rob Pelinka to go that route.
And Brian Windhorst here on the Rich Eisen Show. I listen to you, every word you say, whether it's on this show or somewhere else, and I'm trying to follow some breadcrumbs here, because I do remember you were quite strident during the playoffs last year about Luka's comportment on the court and his ability to stay healthy, to stay on the court. You know, and then in retrospect, also Michael Finley taking the beer out of his hand, like he's in charge of the dorm, sending him back to his dorm room. I'm putting this all together, Brian, and just saying, did the Mavericks just not buy that Luka was worth that money based on his physique and his comportment and everything else that might be underneath the iceberg tip here, Brian?
Yeah, based on their actions, which I'm reading by them trading him, yeah, I think they didn't believe that. And the reason I was so viscerally upset during the finals last year was because I have seen Luka in these big games before in international basketball. Once I was watching him in Eurobasket, the Slovenians were the defending. Eurobasket is I know it's outside of America, so people don't care about it, but the toughest tournament in the world to win as a team is the European Championship. All those teams are loaded. They've all got great players. They all played together for 15 years. To go through that tournament and win it is big. The Slovenians were the defending champions. It was one of the great things Luka's ever done is lead Slovenia to the European Championship. I mean, think about that. Think about little teeny Slovenia winning the European Championship, beating the French and beating the Germans, beating the Italians, beating the Serbians. And he was in this game and he completely lost his cool and fouled out, because in international basketball, when you get a technical foul, it counts as a personal foul and you only get 5. He lost his cool, got technical foul, fouled out of the game. Slovenia gets eliminated. A couple years later, they're in the World Cup in Manila, Philippines. I am there. They are playing against Germany, the eventual world champions. This is a vital game. They need Luka. They are trying not just to win the championship, they are trying to qualify for the Olympics, which is a really big deal. They finished 4th in the previous Olympics. They're trying to qualify to get back. Luka completely loses his cool at the game and the officials. He goes to center court during a foul shot and is screaming at the Secretary General of FIBA in Spanish, screaming at him, claiming the referees are against him, as if FIBA would not want Luka in the FIBA championship game. And a couple of minutes later, can you imagine, this was like the international quarterfinals. Can you imagine if, like, during the Western Conference Finals, Luka Doncic came out to center court and was MFing Adam Silver in the stands at center court? That's what was happening. He completely lost his sight of the game, completely lost his cool, and got ejected. So I had seen him do this several times. In other words, he should have learned from this. And I know you might say, well, who cares about the FIBA World Cup in the Philippines? Well, he does. It's important. And I saw him do it twice and cost his country. So if we get into game 3 of the finals, it's essentially elimination game. No one has ever come back from 3-0 down in the finals. And he completely loses his cool. And they end up winning game 4. The Mavericks were on a roll at that point when he gets ejected. I mean, he fouls out because he lost his cool. He's screaming at his bench. His demeanor is absolutely unacceptable for that game. And the finals were over. And I didn't think the finals should have been over. I thought that final should have been more competitive, because I watched Luka and how great he was in the Western Conference Finals against the Timberwolves. And I was frustrated that I'd seen him do this before and he hadn't learned his lesson. So if somebody who's in the media who doesn't even really know Luka but has watched him do this got that frustrated that I would lose a little bit on national television. Imagine if you were the team that he plays for, and how much and it comes from a place where you respect his talent and respect what he can do. It doesn't come from a place of dislike. And even when I went on that rant, I believed that someday he would overcome that his failures early in his career, where he would lose his cool and then he wouldn't be able to be in the game for his team, whether either he had been ejected or fouled out or he wasn't in the best physical condition. I thought that would just be part of his story. I thought that would be something he would overcome. I can close my eyes and see Luka holding the Bill Russell trophy in his right hand and holding the Larry O'Brien trophy in his left hand, having overcome it because he's good enough to win everything in this league. The Mavericks felt that wasn't going to come with them. And so they, with their actions, I don't need them to say it, I can tell by what they did, didn't believe that he was going to overcome that. And the Lakers do. And so we'll see.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.